Stephen, call it what you will. We don't want to know about God. We want to know God. And why haven't we done this before? It could be because we've been worshipping the wrong God. A God who disappoints. A God who nobody really likes. The God who's never there. The God we locate conveniently outside his creation. A God who intervenes from time to time, while we see ourselves as self-sufficient, really, managing just about in a culture which is no longer meaningfully Christian, where most people are quite content to worship individual desire and choice and the wonders of technology and to facilitate suicide. Isn't that our story? But it need not be that way. There is another God who is not separate from his creation. Indeed, the glory of God's works is everywhere to be found, his goodness certain, the world enchanted by God's presence. This is the God whom Jesus and his followers knew. Their world was a mystery, a sacred reality, with no distinction between the natural and the supernatural. I think it's very interesting that early Christians, they weren't converted by words, by speeches, by arguments, but by signs, wonders, and miracles. By miracles where they saw manifestations of the divine, miracles, not messages. There will be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars. This is the sacramental world which is revealed in Advent, in which our resonant connection with God is best expressed, I think, through music, as we shall discover when we return this evening for our Advent carol service at 6 o'clock. Such beauty, moral beauty, aesthetic beauty, natural beauty, awakens us to profound connections with the God who comes to meet us in this world. It's a rich season, but somehow, I think, spare, tense, taut, preparing for what comes next. A reciprocal relationship with God, one where he will be God and we wait. Where we don't kill each other, as the House of Commons would have us do, if only because we know how fickle and dangerous humans can be when behaving like gods, daring to undermine the sanctity of life. The temptation always, I think, is to take up power, to find a bespoke spirituality to justify what we do. A God who thinks like us. All the more tempting in these days when the internet, our Tower of Babel, gives us an infinite choice of spiritual language, encouraging us to flit from diversion to diversion in an endless search for happiness. Well, that's never going to work anyway. We don't find happiness by searching for it. Happiness comes as a byproduct of another, more crucial search, a search for a presence in the world, call it meaning, or the truth, or God, beyond the confines of your head, outside the disquiet in your soul, beyond the internal monologue I have with myself, to a place where I am powerless. Look up and raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. Such a pilgrimage in faith, and it's God's faith in us, as much as our trust in him, gives me the grace to discover God's love in my life. Because that's what's there. That loving promise to go with me and to go with you through all the questions, the ambiguities, the difficulties, and the poetry and the glorious surprises of human life, because it is in the sacredness of human lives and in the wonders and terrors of his creation, spirit and matter together, what we call the sacramental life, that my God lives and loves and saves. In Advent, we await the coming of Christ. In a simple calendar approach, we look ahead to Christmas. What's less clear is how Christ is to be born, made flesh in our own lives, and it is that, I think, which gives Advent its tension. We're all beset by anxieties and a lack of confidence in our religious self. But what can start today is a pilgrimage of repentance and rebuilding the inner life, which we have allowed to lapse because we always do. We can set out to repair the fragmented attention that makes it hard to relate to God. It's about learning, I think, to see the truth, to look beyond the flawed perceptions of the modern world. And what the future holds for us is the embrace of a God different from anything we can imagine or plan for. But we know it will be like a human embrace. That is to say, a love to which we can respond. The season of Advent puts that love in its widest context, the big picture, cosmic Christ, the truth of all things. Two paths converge, divine and human, eternal and temporal. They meet at the birth of the child Jesus. The presence of God fills all things, including the human soul, from birth to death and into eternity. That's the Advent way, the way of holiness, the way of faith, divine life and human life intertwined, working as one. Come, thou long-expected Jesus, born to set thy people free. Anyway, Happy New Year. Amen.